Afternoon. For those of you that have been on for a few minutes, thanks for being here on time or early. And I know that some others that have registered will probably be joining us as well. We'll go ahead and get started. Today's workshop, and let me just underline that the idea here is a workshop, so more interactive to actually kind of roll your sleeves up and work through issues versus being talked at presentation form. So please do that. Please take the opportunity to interact. This is part of the Department of Energy's ESPC campaign. The Energy Services Coalition, our organization, is partnered with the Department of Energy to provide training and technical assistance to support different partners in the campaign. So this is another installment of that support, which we expect to continue. So we'll go ahead and get started and move forward. Today, so this is a meeting format. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box or raise your hand. Everyone can unmute themselves too, so you can do that as well. And let us know if you have questions. You can stop us as we're going through this, or you can wait till the end, whatever you think works best. If you are not currently a member or have joined the ESPC campaign, pardon me. I know we have a mix today, both of public sector end users and then also some private sector service providers. If you're a private sector service provider and you're on today, there's an opportunity to join the campaign. So this is the link. You'll be provided this later in the slide deck. You can complete an expression of interest to join. And the campaign really is three different tiers. The campaign leaders, which typically are state offices that are charged with overseeing ESPC activities at the state level. Again, those are the public sector sort of state level leaders. ESPC champions, these tend to be the organizations, local governments, K-12 schools, others that are participants and benefit through those state programs. And then the supporters, in the green box, this is where the private sector service providers come in. These are both ESCOs, energy services companies, engineering firms, owners reps, sort of other stakeholders in the project delivery side. So if you are in the supporter category and you haven't yet joined the campaign, there's not a fee or anything like that, but there's an opportunity to engage with this group and with this campaign as a supporter if you're not already there. So today's agenda, we've done really a lot of in-depth discussion and presentation on ESPC. And the thought we had here is the thing that we've heard from a number of our stakeholders and public sector entities is, okay, that's great information. That's a lot of information. Some of that will be useful sort of just in time as we move forward with the project. But, where do we really, what's a good starting point? How do we better understand, if the projects we have are a good fit, if the needs we have can be addressed through energy and water retrofits through ESPC. And so some of those kind of initial, scoping, is this a right fit for our project decisions? Those things are what really we're going to be talking about today. Hopefully you received a copy of the worksheet that's linked below. This is really a tool to use to, begin discussions among your, internal team about, how ESPC could benefit the facilities and the organization. If you got that and had a chance to sort of jot down some ideas, we may come back to that later during the workshop, but that's a resource that's available as sort of a starter tool. So we're going to go into that. Go into introductions in just a minute, thinking about the program, both scope and stakeholders, to-do list and next steps, and then we'll close out with a list of resources that can be a benefit to you as you move forward. So introductions, I'm Doug Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of the Energy Services Coalition. And again, we are actually a founding partner along with NASCIO and NASCO with the Department of Energy on the ESPC campaign. And with me today is Chris Halpin. Chris has been in the industry for decades, literally, and has forgotten more than most people will know about ESPC and ensuring good, solid project and outcomes. So I'm going to turn this over to Chris in just a moment. So he's really our technical and subject matter expert and primary trainer. If you're not aware, the Energy Services Coalition, we're a national nonprofit. The idea is to help develop better ESPC projects by raising the level of knowledge, both with the public sector owners and stakeholders, and then also helping bring the companies up to that same level to make sure that everybody is really singing off the same page. And so it's a public-private partnership. We have private sector service providers. We have public sector members, local chapters in many states, some very active. Others are active, but not as active. So an opportunity to plug in with the ESC. And with that, let me just stop. And Chris, I'm going to turn this over to you for the balance of today's workshop. So I can see you and I can hear you. So please take it over.
Right.
Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Dub. I appreciate it. Thanks for the intros and setting us up for a successful workshop here. Like Dub was saying, most of these trainings that we have done so far have been me basically talking, or Dub and I and a few other guest speakers basically talking at everybody for 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes longer, hour and a half. And we wanted to make this more of an interactive event for everybody, right? Because we've already covered almost everything we're going to go through here. We've covered somewhat already in the previous trainings and stuff that we have done. And we did, some workshops as well. So what we're hoping to do is kind of go through this, like I said, I guess, Dub, if they have questions, so they just hit raise hand or something, and you can just let me know.
Yeah, you can raise hand, or you can drop the question in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself if you would like to do that. So a couple of different ways.
Sure. Okay, great. So what I wanted to start off with, because I don't know how many of you have actually sat through these other trainings that we have done, just kind of do a quick review of sort of what is the ESPC process, right? Energy savings performance contracting. And, it's basically sophisticated design build, right? Focused on energy and water retrofits to, address deferred maintenance and stuff that's just old and broken and needs to be replaced, and saving money, creating local jobs, reducing carbon, a whole bunch of different things. And the way the Department of Energy describes this process is in 5 phases, right? There's phase 1 is planning. That's what we're really going to focus on today. Typically, you get started, you think about, is this going to make sense for me? If so, great. We're going to go to the next step. One of the first things you want to do, hire an owner's rep so that they can help you. They're experts. Like I used to do this full time, right? For 25 years, I've been doing this full time. As an owner's rep, and I sold my business doing that a few years ago, and now I'm basically training people on how to do that sort of stuff. And they can help you as sort of your outside expert to help you get through the process, help you work together with the ESCO, create a level playing field between you and your ESCO, and basically help you create a successful project for everybody involved, all the stakeholders. Right. The second phase is once you decide you're going to do this, you've got your outside help. Just like if you're going to build a house, you hire your architect first before you even start on the design. It's a similar sort of thing. You go through your procurement, put out the RFP for the ESCOs. You go through a whole selection process, and we had a whole training just on that. Then your ESCO joins the team. Then you get started in doing an investment grade audit. You sign your first agreement as the investment grade audit agreement. They go through and spend, 60 to 90, sometimes 120 days. If it's a very large school district with, hundreds of schools, could take a year, or a very large city. But it's typically anywhere from 2 to 4 months for an investment grade audit. Phase 3 is both getting the audit done, and once you're getting 60 to 70% way through the audit, you want to start on the contract itself, right? Going through all the terms and conditions, make sure your legal is involved, budget's involved, finance, everybody's involved. At that point, you want to hire your outside financier. Typically, these are paid for by tax-exempt lease purchase finance vehicles or bonds of many different sorts. Whoever it is, you get them on board through an RFP, And right around the time you get the contract finalized, the audit finalized, and the funding finalized, you go through whatever board you need to get, city council, whatever it is, board of regents, get all those outside approvals done, and then sign the actual agreement with the ESCO, which is more like a construction and services agreement. It starts to look more like a regular construction project, all right? Then you get into the design, construction, and commissioning phase 4. And that is basically where all the stuff that you basically had promised by the ESCO in your investment grade audit then gets put into final design. Does that make sense for what we had in the audit? Construction equipment submittals, does that make sense with what we had in the design and the audit? And then you get into the actual construction. They go through commissioning, measurement verification. Again, we get a whole training on measurement verification and commissioning, and then figuring out who's going to be doing the operations and maintenance. And then you go through eProject Express, which is we did a whole other thing on that. We'll talk about that some more later on, which is a way to basically keep everything in an online, encrypted, safe place, so that you don't have to ask people for details. And then once the project is accepted, you go into the performance period. And that's typically 3 to 5 to 10, sometimes 20, 25 years, where the ESCO is making sure all the energy that you were promised to be saved and the dollars that were in the contract are actually being saved, right? For however long that performance period is. So that's sort of the process and how it works. Next slide. All right, so I have to keep moving the picture of us all here so I can see the slides. So we basically had this set up so that we can go through where you are today, right? Take stock of today. And this is all in these worksheets that hopefully everybody was sent ahead of time. If not, we have some snapshots or screenshots of them here. Figure out where you are, picture the possibilities. What kind of things do you want to get done? Do you have any targets or objectives in mind? Once we get that all figured out, get your stakeholders mapped out. And when you're doing this in a public entity, right, you have all kinds of stakeholders, both internally inside your organization and externally. And it's not just the ones you usually think of as, building inspector needs to come and look at our stuff and approve it, but it's getting, outside approvals from school boards, city council, fire department, right? There's a lot of different stakeholders external that need to be mapped into this. And ultimately, once we have all this figured out, a 30-day action plan, right? So the first thing is really, does this make sense for you, right? And if you're a tiny little, school district with 2 schools, you only spend $150,000, $200,000 a year in utilities, it's probably not going to work for you, right? But if you're anything larger than that, it will most likely work for you. So, and if this all works for you within 90 days, secure the approval to start issuing your RFQs, right? This phase 2, right? So what I've been talking about already is more phase 1 that we saw in the previous slide. Next thing, you're going to go hire your owner's rep and eventually your ESCOs. And we've created template documents. I created template documents, both solicitation documents and agreements for owner's reps for Department of Energy over the past year or two. That just got approved. We're still waiting on sort of internal Department of Energy approval to be issued publicly. But as I'm sure you've all heard what's gone on with Department of Energy. There's been a lot of folks that have left, so everything's taking much longer. But they've given us approval to basically post it on our Energy Services Coalition website. So we're starting to do that. We don't have them quite up yet, but we have them up soon. And same thing with ESCO documents, Performance Contracting National Resource Center in DOE, work together with National Association of Energy Services Companies and the National Association of State Energy Officials, or NASEO, as well as Energy Services Coalition, myself and others, and Dub, to put together these documents to be able to hire and then secure an agreement with energy services companies. So if you're in a state that doesn't have any of these template documents, you'll be able to use these directly at no charge. All right, next slide. Okay, so, taking stock of where you are, all right? Hold on, I'm gonna get rid of this. Okay, now I can see the top. So hopefully you have these. If not, you can just follow along. And there was that link in the first slide. You could actually click on that link and the web sheet, these worksheets will come up. We can kind of go through these if you have it in front of you and sort of what the expectations are. So in general, right, you're going to take a look at all these different systems or areas within your buildings, right? Lighting, as you would imagine, most existing lighting is fluorescent at this point. There's hardly any incandescents left out there. There may be a few old halogens around, but most things you have linear fluorescent tubes, or you have, this those circular, either click in or screw in compact fluorescents. Most of those, right, they last 20 to 30,000 hours for the linear fluorescence and 10 to 15,000 hours for compact fluorescence. There's probably a lot of outages. That may be underperforming where they're down to half the light output that they used to have. And if that's the case, right, you want to replace those with LEDs and mostly put controls in as well, whether they're occupancy sensors or some sort of controls on them. And I happen to be in California today, and the new laws here, Title 24, require occupancy sensors everywhere, motion sensors everywhere, so that you walk down the hallway of this hotel, and as you go down the hallway, click, the lights come on and they go off behind you as you leave, which is a great way to do it, right? It saves a ton of money, and it's great from a security point of view, because you then know if the lights are on and no one's supposed to be there, something's going on, right? So there's a lot of opportunities there with lighting, because to convert fluorescence over to LED, you save like half the electricity of those fixtures, and they last 3 to 4 times as long, right? So, and I won't go into the level of detail for all these other ones, but you're going to want to take a look at that for everything. HVAC, right? Heating, ventilation, air conditioning is another big sore spot, and that's one thing. I have to say there were almost no silver linings with the pandemic, but what it did show is how decrepit the HVAC systems are in public spaces in this country, especially in schools, right? So that really sort of pulled the Band-Aid off, and you see a lot of schools operating with 30, 40, and 50-year-old heating and air conditioning systems. There's just no way to control that, especially during a pandemic. So that's another huge opportunity, and it's expensive to replace most HVAC, right? It's, $2 to $5 a foot in most cases to be able to do that. So that works really well for a performance contract, where you blend sort of lower payback lighting, higher payback air conditioning, boiler and chiller replacements together. And you can often get these things to cash flow. Same thing with controls and building automation systems, and water and sewer, right? I'm out here, I live in Las Vegas, out here in the Southwest, as everyone knows, we're having a terrible drought. Water has increased in price by a factor of 5 in Nevada since I moved here. So it's a big deal. And now you're able to actually replace them with a pretty decent payback, right? So there's a lot of opportunities in both water and sewer replacements. Like most people don't know, if you have a cooling tower on your site or you have irrigation, you can usually put makeup meters on those and get the credit back from your sewer company, because most sewer companies charge you based on how much water you use. They look at your water bill and charge you accordingly. So you can actually get a credit based on that. And that's how we've been able to do that in performance contracts in the past. And usually there's all kinds of other things, right? There's building envelope issues. You have old windows, old doors. You can see, daylight through the cracks between them. A lot of opportunities there. So that's the sort of stuff we want people to take a look at. And if you have a lot of these sort of symptoms, you're usually a great candidate for a performance contract. Another thing to take a look at is what's your annual utility spend? Take a look at your last couple of years. Anything after 2021, right? Because 20 was a nightmare, because most places were closed down for a year or more. Same thing with parts of 2021. Take a look at 22, 23, 24 and go, wow, we're usually spending an increasing amount over time. If you're spending at least $500,000 to $1 million a year, you're going to be a good candidate for a performance contract, right? Because that's what most ESCOs are only going to look at, opportunities where the client or potential client is spending at least that. Otherwise, it's just not worth it for them to go through and do the whole audit on spec. Hopefully it all works out, sign relatively complex contracts, right? You're going to want to take a look at your number of buildings. If you have, like I said, if you're spending $50,000 to $100,000 a year and you have 2-3 buildings, a performance contract is most likely not going to work for you. But then you go to your local electric and gas and water utilities and work with them. And most of them have rebates available, sometimes to even help you pay for the cost of an audit, right? And then how many square feet? Like I said, usually 50 to 100,000 square feet is going to work. And if you have any quick wins you see right now, you note them down, right? And lighting and HVAC tends to be the ones you see right away. Even building automation, where your buildings are running all weekend when there's nobody there, right? Next slide. So do we have any questions on that first one? All right. Okay, sorry. And I'm, making you drink through a fire hose. You usually have to spend
I'll
20
keep an eye
minutes just
open.
on that.
Yeah, I don't see any questions yet, but yeah, if you have
Okay.
questions, please don't hold back.
Okay, great. So once you've figured out sort of where we stand, right? And that's what I call like a very high level baseline, right? You're going to do a real baseline. Your ESCO is going to do a real baseline evaluation for you, where they're going through and doing linear regression analyses on 3 years of bills and do detailed inspections of all your equipment, interview your operations and maintenance folks and all that. They're going to create a real baseline once they get on board as part of your investment grade audit. But this is, for me, sort of the, what I call a drive-by, right? Do these buildings look like they're good candidates for performance contracts? And if so, what kind of things do we think we'll see, right? Like you may have Board of County Commissioners is like, we're going to go, or like, again, I'm in California today. They want to go like carbon free by 2030, 2040, right? Throughout the state. That's a really aggressive. They and Hawaii have the most aggressive targets in the country. In order to do that, you have to do pretty much everything on this list in order to really become, net zero or carbon free operation. But one of the first things you're going to take a look at, and these sort of match those categories I talked about a few minutes ago, LED lighting, right, and controls, right, and replacing every source of lighting you have with LED, regardless of whether it's linear tubes or screw-in fixtures or clip-in fixtures in recessed lighting. Everything is going to go to LED, and you're going to want to go to good high-quality LED. There's a range, just like compact fluorescents were when they came out in the 90s. You had cheap stuff you don't want to buy. Like, don't buy this stuff on eBay, right? It's all cheap imported stuff that really isn't going to work well for you. It's not going to last well. But go for, medium to higher quality LEDs will last 75 to 100,000 hours rather. And same thing, controls that go along with them. They now have in Home Depot even, right? For your house, you can buy LED lamps and bulbs that not only can change color temperature, go from like, warm white to bright white, the increasing degrees Kelvin, but they can be dimmed at the same time, saving you even more money, right? So there's tons of opportunities. Some of them have built-in motion sensors. There's a lot of opportunities there. And if your HVAC systems aren't super old, they're like 5 to 10 years old, they don't need to be replaced yet, you can retro commission them and hire a company that can do that, either individually if you aren't a candidate for a performance contract, or have your ESCO do that. And that typically delivers like a 6-month to a 3-year simple payback. Those savings can then be used to pay for the your 30 and 40-year-old boilers and chillers, right? So there we go. Demand response. Yes, Beatrice, we'll get to your question when we get down to demand response. So HVAC, a great opportunity, and they are sometimes the heart of performance contracts. Lighting and HVAC and controls are typically the 3 most common measures in a performance contract. And they're the ones, you want to work them together typically so that you make sure you're future-proofing stuff. Because all of these now, as you can imagine, it's all solid state. Everything's got an IP address. You can have each light fixture in every building has its own IP address. So if something goes wrong, you can see exactly which one is wrong, and you don't have to go and like rewire things. If you change from a classroom to another kind of space, this goes on in schools and hospitals, you can actually commission them from a laptop, which is amazing. So repeat the top 3. Yes, thanks, Faye. So LED lighting controls, right? That's your number 1 ECM or energy conservation measure in virtually every single project, right? Because in virtually every building you go into, the lighting is old, right? Even if it's only 7 or 8 years old, right? At that point, that was the inflection point for LEDs being around the same price or cheaper than compact fluorescence or linear fluorescence, right? Because you could get fluorescence now for almost nothing, but they only last, like I said, for a third of the time, sometimes less than that for compacts than a standard LED lamp, which 50 to 100,000 hours typically, right? And then the motion sensing controls and dimming controls that go along with those. LEDs work much better with dimmers and color temperature control than compact fluorescence ever did or linear fluorescence ever did. Your second most popular one is HVAC, whether it's retro-commissioning, where you're basically running all those systems back to where they were. Typically, it means running through the controls and making sure when the building was originally designed and hopefully commissioned, you get it back to those set points, right? Like I've seen buildings within a year or two, they're running all weekend again, right? Because there was like a volleyball game on a Saturday or there was a dance on a Saturday. And no one ever turned everything off again. They changed the programming once, right? So there's also a thing called building analytics, which usually goes in as part of building automation system upgrades, where they're using AI and machine learning now to learn that like there's nobody there. Let's not have this all working over the weekends, right? Or at night. And then heat pumps, chillers, water heaters, electrification, they tend to be much more expensive, but becoming more and more popular. So that's usually the fourth or fifth down the list. But building automation system upgrades are typically the third. They're the ones you see, the top three I mentioned earlier. They're the third most, actually, probably the second most popular. They go in tandem with HVAC upgrades and retro commissioning, because anything you put in, you want to be able to control well, right? Especially today, because everything now has an IP address and everyone is used to using their phones to control everything, like in their homes, right? With Apple HomeKit and Google Nest thermostats, most people are used to this in their homes, and it's really easy to be able to do that in institutional buildings now. So demand response is being able to use building automation systems and building analytics to control your HVAC so that on a hot summer day, like it's been in the hundreds in a few days here in California, where I live in Las Vegas, it's only been 100, right? Last summer, this time it was 112 to 120 every day. And the utility was calling for reductions in energy use. So a lot of people were having to change the set points, right? And demand response, you can do in concert with your utility. And this can work everything from in a residential setting to a large institutional setting like whole towns, whole school districts, where they can change their set points by 1 or 2 degrees, right? Which hardly affects anything. No one notices it. And it can save hundreds of kilowatts of electricity, sometimes megawatts of electricity, right? So that's that much less you're using that you can then deliver to the grid, and your utility will pay you for that, right? And that's what Beatrice Giraldo from the California Department of Justice was mentioning in her comment. You can use demand response as like an ad hoc ECM, right? It only works when the grid is calling for it. But boy, you can get paid a lot of money. I used to do this a lot back east, and I had clients in Maryland, FDA headquarters that were doing this with cogeneration, and they were able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in revenue back to the government because they were able to slow those systems down. And they still, met all the cooling requirements, but they were able to slow the systems down. So instead of at 68 degrees, right, you run it at 70 degrees, or instead of 70, you run it to 72. So demand response is a whole nother thing. We could do a whole class just on that, but that's a really huge tool, especially now. And water fixture irrigation retrofits, I mentioned that's huge, especially in the Southwest. It's becoming a problem in the East Coast too. Even Florida is getting droughts now on and off. Solar, right, which is becoming super popular. It's taking a bit of a dive now, but that's probably going to be a short-term thing because of the IRA funding going away over the next year or two. Battery energy storage systems, another fantastic opportunity, because that is what gives you the resilience that even if you have solar, most people that don't realize this, but most solar systems that were put in the past 10 years require a signal from the grid. If they don't get that signal from the grid, they shut off, right? Because they don't want during a power outage for linemen to then get electrocuted. Just like if you put a generator in at your house, you have to put in that sub panel, and that has a trip switch in it so that it doesn't send electricity back out to the street, electrocute linemen that are up on trucks trying to get your power poles working again. So most people don't realize that. And when they have a power outage, all the buildings are literally out, even if they have solar on them. So you need to make sure that when you put the battery storage energy system in, it's working in concert with your solar system so you can stay actually up and running and self-contained. That's what FDA was able to do. Some of my clients in Rhode Island do this. It's now becoming super popular in California and Hawaii. It's actually part of code now in California and Hawaii. And lastly, building envelope, right? Like I mentioned earlier, windows, doors, seams between roofs and walls. I saw this at FBI Quantico when we did work there. They literally had big gaping holes that had to get sealed. And there's a lot of other opportunities to do that. And there's other non-energy goals, deferred maintenance. Will it always save energy? No, but it could save a lot of money from maintenance contracts where you're replacing things that are old belted equipment with new non-belted equipment. Usually saves a ton of money. Increasing comfort in spaces. Constant hot calls and cold calls cost a lot of time of operations and maintenance, folks. Where I've had a client out here in Nevada where the guy had to drive 4 hours to get to the next town to fix the problem. Instead of being able to do it now, they did a performance contract, and on his laptop, he fixes the problem, right? And carbon reduction goals, right? Huge opportunities. Resilience, you don't have time to get into that, but that's really keeping everything running regarding whether there's flooding or storms or whatever. Compliance, right now, there's a lot of places, like I said, in California, parts of New England, and Mid-Atlantic, where you have to reduce your carbon use by a certain amount or you get fined, like in New York City, Seattle, LA. And training your O&M staff. It's a huge opportunity to basically increase the knowledge base of your O&M staff, right? By doing a project like this, because you're working with your ESCO to train your folks so that they get out of being, firemen of doing reactive maintenance. Now they can do preventive and even predictive maintenance with the proper training and the proper tools. And there's all kinds of other goals you can have out there. Next slide. So any questions on that, actually, before we go off? Okay, none. So hopefully this is giving you some ideas on the kind of things that you can do. So once you've come up with these ideas, hopefully at this point you have your owner's rep helping you with this, and they can help you really think through who do we need to talk to. And from my experience doing this, when I started doing this, I worked on the ESCO side and as a consulting engineer before that. So I've been doing this altogether for 40 years, but starting in 2000, I started my own company doing this. And early on, I was doing work with the federal government. And my first project at a big Army base, we learned a very difficult lesson where somebody in the budget group didn't pay any attention to this for a year. Then at the very last minute, right before they're about to sign this, $25 million agreement with the ESCO, he popped out of the weeds, right? And was like, hey, you can't do this. And he had veto power over the project. Well, he stopped the project dead for 3 months, right? And that's all opportunity cost. That's that much more money you're handing to the utility every month, right? Just because you didn't get this project done. So anybody that can stop your project internally or externally, whether it's, principals at a high school, a board of regents at a university in higher ed, or city council, right? You need to make sure that those folks are on board from the beginning. So usually once we would get an ESCO on board, we'd go with the, head of facilities for whatever the client was. I was the owner's rep. We would go through and sit down every couple of months and give them a preview. Here's what we're going to do. Here's now we're 3 months in, now we're 6 months in, making sure that anybody that could veto these projects were on board early on, right? Especially the ones who have to sign the agreements. So the people in finance and legal, right? And make sure if you have outside financial advisors and outside legal counsel, they are involved from the beginning, because they're the ones who can really stop these debt. Because without those signed agreements, you're not going anywhere. Any verbal agreements just aren't going to hold out in public sphere, right? So you want to make sure you have them named, right? Make sure who's the second in command as well, because people can go on vacation for 2 or 3 weeks at a critical juncture. You want to make sure you have somebody else that can take their place. And this we've set up to help you think through, why would they care, right? And influence of them, or is it high, medium, or low, right? And your operations and maintenance people, they have sometimes a lower influence, but very high importance, right? And you want to make sure you engage everybody from the beginning. One of the things that I used to do, and I come from a family of laborers and tradesmen, right? My parents are from Ireland, and all my uncles used to tell us, oh, we don't care if you're engineers, you still don't know how to design buildings and build them, right? And they were mostly right, right? And for me, it was always really important to get those folks involved from the very, very beginning. You make them part of the solution, and your project will go well as long as all the other folks in the higher level, the white collar jobs, are involved. The blue collar people will help you get this done, right? And will help you work really well with the ESCO, because they're never going to know as much about your buildings as your folks who are running them and maintaining them. So anyway, these are the kind of folks you want to get involved, right? And key occupants, especially in public, right? You want to make sure that whether it's faculty or it's the firemen, the policemen, whoever you're dealing with, understand what's going to go on in their buildings and make them part of the solution, especially these days with everyone has got a phone, right? That they can be taught all of this stuff on their phones easily over time. Any questions on this? All right, next slide. So you've gotten through sort of all the beginnings of this, right? You've got sort of a plan in your head. Now it's time to turn it into reality, right? You complete this worksheet that we've gone through, right? The first three worksheets. On this one, collect your utility bills, right? And these days, most utilities will provide these to you for free. They used to charge, right? Most of them are doing it for free now. And in some utilities will provide you literally CSV version, right? Sort of like a generic Excel table by email, right? Or allow you to, basically sign up through their website and actually look at your accounts online, and you can just download, just like you do with bank statements. Almost everybody's online banking, right? You can do exactly that with most utilities now. A lot of them are involved in a thing called Green Button, which is a Department of Energy initiative that got started about 15 years ago, where you go onto their website where it says Green Button, you click on that, and it's already preloaded with the past like 2 years of data, and you just download it directly, right? So that's a great thing to do, and set a due date for each of these, right? It usually takes 30 to 60 days to get all this. If you happen to use energy information systems like an Energy Cap or Energy Star, a lot of that is already readily available. And you want to get this together so when you do your ESCO RFP, you're giving them an idea of how much you're spending, right? So they can say, okay, this is going to be worthwhile going after this contract. Next thing is schedule a free technical assistance call with us, right? Through this ESPC campaign. I'm available basically for free to be able to help you get all of this stuff set up and figure out what's the next step. Like I hope that Beatrice Geraldo from California Department of Justice is on this. I spent 3 months helping her through this past winter get a contract sort of in shape with their ESCO. And if you have a state energy program, right, ESPC program, call them. They're one of your first calls, right? Because they can help you set some of this stuff if they have the technical assistance available directly. If not, we can help you with it. You want to identify your potential owners reps or energy services companies, and that's where your state energy office or Department of General Services, like they have in California and other places, do that. Same with a lot of states on the East Coast have really sophisticated programs. State of Maryland, state of Rhode Island, state of Connecticut, all have these kinds of programs. And put together, once you get all this in place, you can put together a one-page concept memo for leadership. That's one of the next steps we're going to do. We just got our contract extended by another 90 days. So we're going to work with the Department of Energy as one of our first things is put together this concept memo, right? So we can help you really put this out there in something that's easy to review and approve. And then set up a follow-up meeting with your finance group. So once you kind of got this all sort of put down on paper, if you will. So Bill, hey Bill, how you doing? It's been a long time. We don't have an example yet of a concept memo, right? I know some ESCOs, I know you your ESCO and your former one have your own. We're going to be generating those and make it sort of generic so that anybody can use it, right? And it's not going to be coming from one ESCO or another. That'll be one that's going to come from you through Department of Energy, right? Okay, so I think that's it. So we want to make sure it's right for you and get on to the next step, which is your RFQs. Okay, next slide.
Chris, let's pause here for just a second and make
Sure.
sure that, see if there's any questions that folks have about this, the plan and the process, the 4 steps. If anyone needs clarification around any of this, we can do that now. We're a few more things and we're going to wrap things up, but we're going to move on to a different topic. So now's the time. If you have any questions or any clarification you want to ask, please do. You can unmute yourself or raise your hand or add to the chat. All right.
Let's see what's still in chat. Okay.
Okay. Good. Seeing none, just want to make sure we provide an opportunity, and we'll have contact information later. So, Chris, we'll turn it back to you.
Wait, did you see what's in the chat?
Yeah, I just saw what's in the chat. I never finished answering Beatrice's question, right? So Beatrice Geraldo had a question for the demand response program and the DRA. I think that's the reliable assets that California utilities put out. She asked, can we consider including standby generator upgrades, right? So with performance contracts, it's very hard to get a standby generator upgrade included, right? It's possible, but because these events are on an as-needed basis, the ESCO doesn't know how many times that's going to be available, right? So if you have, like last summer, again, where we were in Las Vegas, I think there were like 7 events, right? This summer, it's been a cooler summer, right? Cooler being relative. It's only 100 to 103, but the grid is prepared for that. We haven't had any, right? So if your ESCOs typically aren't that willing to guarantee a certain number of events, because again, they've had to pay the money to build all this. And if it doesn't get used, the payback isn't there, right? So what a lot of them will do, however, is build it into the program, and the savings for other measures can cover that, right? So that's what we're starting to see. That can help pay for like battery energy storage system, as opposed to say a diesel fire generator. Right? That's one lesson we learned from Superstorm Sandy in New York, where I was originally, is that half those generators typically don't work, especially if it's a large outage over a large period of time. They don't always work. And then if it's a 1 week, 2 week outage, diesel is gone like that, right? And it's really hard to get the diesel. So converting to natural gas can be super helpful. But in places like California, you can't do that anymore, right? You're not allowed to add any more natural gas hookups, from what I understand. So going to battery energy storage is the best way to do it, but that's very expensive. The prices are coming down, but it's very expensive unless you can use that to help you on an almost daily basis with varying your load to be able to manage it and reduce your overall energy use, both demand charges and consumption charges. Again, that's all. We could spend a whole hour just on that, but hopefully that answered your question. And that's sort of on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for providing your insights. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. And was that it? So then we, Faye,
Yes.
hopefully we answered yours. Example of concept memo. Okay. Great. So, so this technical assistance, I spoke about it for a few minutes before, and we haven't had a lot of uptake on this. We used to call it office hours, and I think it was maybe confusing to people on what we're actually providing. But in this case, we can give you some examples of what we've done. I explained a little bit what we did with Beatrice in California DOJ is, they had an investment grade audit, and it wasn't really sort of working for them. And some of the things they weren't really sure on what was being provided. So I was able to sit with them, look through the audit, come up with some questions, and almost everybody, and this is one of our other presentations, should be using a comment response resolution spreadsheet that Department of Energy generated, 20 years ago for the federal program. And we've now brought it to the MUSH market, right? And that's a really good way to help you track what goes on, right? And you and your ESCO want all the questions asked and answered and documented so that there's no one second guessing everyone at the end, right? I've seen this in school board meetings. Why don't we have solar in every building? Well, because it's a 50-year payback. That's why you don't have solar in every building, right? But if that's not in writing somewhere, it's hard to get that across to folks, right? So this ends up protecting the owners and the ESCOs. At the end, you have, what we used to call a paper trail of the development of the project all the way through, right? And that's what we did with DOJ, and we're able to basically get all these questions answered so that, Department of Justice and California DGS all were able to go, okay, now this makes sense, and they sign the contract, right? And this can help with clients who are in the performance period. We had another city in the upper Midwest had some questions on, we've got our third year annual M&V report, and they're saying we're saving all this money, but we're not really seeing it. Something doesn't make sense to us. So we can help take a look through these. And if you have an owner's rep, this is what they should be doing for you, right? But if you don't have one, right, we can help and maybe help you then show you how to get one full time. So after the fact, we can help during the performance period, this phase 5. Also, if you're just at the very beginning where we're talking about now, I can easily spew all the stuff off, right? I've done this hundreds of times, right? But for other people who've never done this before, it's still kind of a daunting task, right? And I can see after doing all these trainings, one of the reasons we don't get a lot of questions are people are like, oh my God, this is giving me a headache, right? There's a lot of stuff in here, and it's hard to get all this and sort of digest it in an hour, right? So that's where we can go, you know what, let's schedule a call for an hour and start off and kind of figure out where you want to go, right? We have another state energy office who everybody's left in the past 2 years, right? That everybody there is new, and they have lots of old information, but they don't have the institutional knowledge. So we're going to help them rebuild that institutional knowledge. And it happens to be a state I worked in a lot for 8 or 10 years. So we can do that too and help you, if you're a state energy officer, to revive your program. And if you're a state agency or a local government or a school district, town, whatever it is, county, we can help you figure out how to put a program together and get projects going, right? And then once you have that set up, then you can hire your owner's rep and get your ESCOs on board, right? Because once you have a team in place, you're not going to need us mostly, right? But that's what we're hoping to do, is sort of bridge that gap with this technical assistance, whether it's the very beginning, whether it's during development, or whether it's after a project is completed and you're in the performance period. There's always questions, right? And hopefully we can help you save time and energy and money by doing this for free, right? And we're never going to replace an owner's rep, right? But we're definitely going to help you get some questions answered so you can get back on the right track or start off on the right track. Does that make sense? So any questions about that? Okay, great. So all you need to do, you're all going to get copies of these slides. You just click on that link and go to the sign up form. It'll go to our folks at DOE, who'll forward it to Dub and I, and then we'll give you a call or email you and set up a call to get started. All right. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so here's a case study, right? This is a great case study of what can actually happen, right? And this comes from Rockingham County Schools in North Carolina. They did an energy savings performance contract that included lighting, HVAC, water conservation, and enhanced indoor air quality, right? So this is huge, is what I was talking about, where during the pandemic, we started to learn that, my goodness, all these schools that our kids have been going to for years, and even nice school districts. When I lived in Connecticut, our kids went to, a really nice school district, and they had to close some of the schools because of mold, right? So this goes on everywhere. And some of the benefits they got by doing this, and this is some of the most important stuff for, kids in schools have to breathe clean air, right? Our kids are falling asleep, all these kinds of things, mold and all that. It really attacked deferred maintenance, right? Which is a big problem, like I've mentioned a few times now. It's a huge problem in schools and hospitals and office buildings all over the country. They were able to install a new chiller, right, which is a central source of air conditioning in a building, and replace the air handling units. Now, most air handling units will last a long time, 30, 40 years, but sometimes they get to be much older. And I've been in buildings where the air handling units are from like the 1940s and 50s. And it's very hard to replace them because there's zero payback to it. It's basically replacing a big steel box, right? So if you're able to do that in a performance contract, because you may have, retro commissioning and lighting that are 3 or 4 or 7 year simple payback, replacing or paying for and providing enough savings at a low enough cost to be able to replace air handling units, which are like a 30, 40, 150 year payback, right? And they did LED lighting upgrades, right? That was, a great way to improve the quality of the lighting in spaces, make it dimmable, daylight harvesting, all this kind of stuff, and make it a better place to teach, right? And they've shown in studies that, the learning environment through better thermal comfort and better lighting increases kids' test scores and their performance, right? It's just great. Everybody then wants to be in the room. And they were able to upgrade digital controls. Like I said, this goes into every contract. And you heard me mention before, generically, these top 3 ECMs, they're the first 3 you see here, right? Lighting, HVAC, controls. And here they're able to do that. And again, in many schools, they're running all weekend. Again, there was a basketball game or a volleyball game a month ago, and they never reset the programming. They did water conservation, upgraded plumbing fixtures, usually going from, old 3 and 4 gallons per minute to like 0.5 or 1.2 gallons per minute, depending on what the application is, saving a ton of water. And when I used to do a lot of work in North Carolina, it'd be boom or bust. 1 year there was floods like you've had the past 2 years. 3 years later, it's a drought. Well, the reservoirs are going low. You remember it was in the news, Raleigh, right? And Fayetteville, Fort Bragg was running out of water because they hadn't had rain in almost a year. So this goes on everywhere, all over the country. They were able to insulate chill water piping. Right? Another thing where I've literally seen streaks of brown across drop ceilings because the cold water pipes weren't insulated. And in the summer, they sweated, right? They condensed on the outside and dripped all over the ceiling, right? Ruining ceiling tiles. So it's a lot of these issues can get solved that may not always save money, but they're saving you a lot of other pain and aggravation. And they were able to streamline internal operation process. So using controls, like I talked about with that one client of mine out west, in that one county in Nevada, it's a 4-hour drive between one city and the other city. So by being able to put all of this online, right, and through, phone apps even, you can save so much time and money, right? And some of that is monetizable, some of it isn't. And you can click online to see more information about this case study. It's a great case study. We also have this submission form, right? So we're asking both owners, right? Cities, towns, school districts, state agencies, submit your case study so you can honestly get some recognition for the great work that you've done. Same with the ESCOs out there and the owners reps out there. Here's a great way to show potential clients, like some of the ones that are on this call and others. Here's the great work that we were able to do for this client in the MUSH market, right? And it shows everyone, right? Some of the naysayers out there, oh, I was involved in one once 20 years ago. This is no good. Well, today's a new day and cash is tight. So performance contracting is still the best tool in any public agency's tool bag. Next slide. Any questions on this? All right, great. Okay, so resources. We've only got about 5 minutes left. So I'll go through this one pretty quickly. So for ESC, we've got a bunch of the stuff going up on our website. All of this, virtually all the trainings we did previously were on Department of Energy's website, but some of those pages go down and then come back up and go down and come back up. So we've been given permission to load a lot of it onto our website. So we've got the previous workshop we did around engaging internal and external stakeholders. That was a whole hour just of that one process I talked about in that one page in the worksheet. And then we did our last webinar a few weeks ago of the resources. So it's basically taking what is here on one page. We did a whole hour just on that, right? Because there's a lot of great information out there. And these are all live links. So feel free to go back and look at those. Then Lawrence Berkeley Lab, under contract at Department of Energy, has developed, well, they originally developed eProject Builder for the federal management program, energy management program, where the government wasn't able to really track all these huge projects, right? And projects that are, $200 and $300 million on 300 and 400 buildings, and they were never able to track all that. So they created this for ESCOs on their owners' behalf to be able to put all this stuff online and protected, password protected and encrypted, so that the owner and the ESCO had access to it, right? But it wasn't really working well for the MUSH market. It was all set up around, federal government contracting. So Berkeley Lab basically revised it for the MUSH market And it really works well. They work together with NASCO and NASIO and Energy Services Coalition to get real people who do this, for a living in the public side, to go through it and help them. And they created this eProject Express. And there's some great training that Lawrence Berkeley Lab has out there, so you can learn how this works. And for me, when I was doing this at owner's rep full time, I wish this was around, because for us to try to find records, even a year or two later, was so hard, right? Because the person that had it left the ESCO, or the person that had it left the county, right? We can't find their laptop, right? It was all on the laptop. It never got onto the central drive, whatever. There was always some sort of excuse. And this really, really helps from a live basis. As you develop like all these different contracts I was talking about, as they get executed, they get loaded up into EPX, so that it's at the click of a button, you can get to that instead of trying to go find it somewhere on a drive that somebody said they put on, right? So I can't say enough about this. It's a hugely helpful resource. Then the U.S. Department of Energy for years. Yes, James, we're going to share these slides at the end, right, in the next couple of days, and double go that at the end. So Department of Energy has its Better Buildings program. It's been around for like 10 or 12 years now. They created a whole ESPC toolkit, right? So all kinds of resources. We don't have time to go through them, but they have everything from evaluating results. Did you really get what you were promised? And a few other things. Oops, we've gone back. And then they have a business case for conducting M&V in state and local government. This is done by an old friend of mine, Phil Coleman, and others at the lab. And it's a fabulous resource document for you. And then this PCNRC that I mentioned earlier. So they've created these template documents that have been vetted by the ESCO community and the public community, and they're all very third party. And then the Department of Energy hired an outside firm that hired my former company, and we were able to put together an 8-module certificate series for owners reps primarily, but anybody can do it. And you can get learning units, right? Whether they're CEUs or PDHs, whether you're an architect, an engineer, whatever it is that you need to get training certificates for to keep your license in various different states. This is a like 15-hour, 8-module course that it was down for a while. It's on the whole building design guide website. And once you click that, when you get this, you'll see it. That is a super resource for anybody that's going to do this, not just owners reps, because you get to learn from scratch at your pace how this all should get done, mainly from an owner's rep's perspective, but anybody involved in it can really learn a lot from this. The next one, I can't quite see the written guides and reports down there. It's the M&V Energy Performance Contracting Guide for Facilities Owners.
Yes.
Right. So this is a brand new document that just got published in January by EVO, or the Efficiency Evaluation Organization. Right. So they're a nonprofit group that was put together to serve both the performance contracting community and the utility community. So they developed the International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocols, or IPMVP. That's sort of like the gospel of performance contracting and measuring M&V. Sort of like GASB and FASB is for financial folks. That's what this is for performance contracting. So the owners reps and the ESCOs, they have their own inside geeky engineers like I used to hire that knew this stuff back and forth. They're working together on your benefit, on your behalf rather, to make sure all of that stuff is done well. So you're able to measure and verify the savings that were promised. And this guide that they put together, which I'd never done before, it was sort of like a very technical guide. They put this together for the owner. So like it's in plain English. It's not in engineering speak, right? So this is a super, super guide for everybody to be able to help learn how M&V gets done. Next slide. All right, that is all we have. Do we have any final questions?
I think we've addressed everything in the chat. And just to reiterate, so if you're signed up or you've attended today, you will get a copy of the slides. And these slides have active links in them. So everything you see that looks like it's a link that you can click on, you will be able to click on as a resource after this. we'll also send you a link to the recording. And so if you have need to go back and review anything Chris has said today, or you have colleagues that weren't able to join live and you feel they'd benefit from this, you can share that link with them as well. And those will go out, look for it probably the next couple of days.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Appreciate your time.
And any questions that come up, here's Chris's email, my email. Don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to support you and appreciate you attending this afternoon.
All right. Thanks. Take care.